Hello and welcome everybody to the 23rd episode of SEO Surgery in India. Well, this is the first episode of this year. So first of all, Happy New Year, you all. And thank you so much once again for showing wonderful response and submitting a lot of websites like you do every time. So thank you so much for the wonderful support. And today we have again three wonderful experts. And this time we have Aji Isaac, who is CEO at TechShu. And then we have Harry Sanders from Australia. He is co-founder and director of StudioHawk. And then we have wonderful Gerry White from Just Eat UK. So I would love to invite these guys to introduce themselves, but before that, I would like to introduce myself. So I'm Nitin Manchanda. I work at Go Euro, and I moved to Berlin, so it's a new city for me. I'm exploring the city. It's a lovely city, but super huge. So yeah, that's me. And now let's start with Aji. So Aji, could you please say a few words about you?
Hi, I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Uh, yep. I started my career almost 15 years back. It happened all of a sudden in digital. Just got introduced to digital. It's been 15 years. Every day learning something new. So what we do is we help customers in terms, and also we run digitalmarketinguniversity.com, where we are helping people to get educated about digital. The whole idea is to structure the content in such a way that more people can learn this faster and be better professional. I believe better professionals makes better society. People will make even better society. So let's help more people. So that's what we are about. So we have a large team of 750 people working on digital on various aspects. So life is good. Can't complain.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. And Aji, what's your favorite SEO aspect these days? What are you working on?
SEO is no SEO at all. Okay, so don't go too deep into SEO, but focus more on the customer. And especially in today's no, in today's age, what we should always focus on is that Google has moved on from data to signal a long time back. Now they have perfected the signals. So what you don't need to do is give too much of signal which tells Google that you are not naturally growing, you are manipulating the growth. So customer and balance out with SEO, I think you will have a better SEO optimization. SEO is all about helping Google understand your site better rather than manipulating Google for better ranking. That's my suggestion.
Absolutely. Well, I would have really appreciated if you could say SEO is changed completely. Then SEO is not SEO anymore. Come on. That works here. But yeah, thank you so much for
So
sharing that with us, and welcome once again to the show. All right. So moving to the next professional we have today, that's Harry Sanders, and he's really popular in Australia after the recent Semrush awards. So he was the winner of Young Search Professional of the Year, and his company was nominated for 6 categories. Well,
Mm.
wow, hey, that's
Yeah,
amazing. I would love to
good
hear more
fun.
about you.
So over in Australia, I believe that so I'm the founder and director of StudioHawk. So we're probably at this stage the largest dedicated SEO provider in Australia. We just do SEO. So we've got a team of 10 people on shore here that work day in, day out, from juniors to mid-level to senior SEO specialists. We work on all sorts of different campaigns, to your big kind of international ones to your small companies as well.
Sounds good. And Harry, when did you start, your SEO journey? Because you still looks like 20 years old
Yeah.
kid.
Well, well, I actually started quite a while ago. I started when I was 13, right? So maybe
Oh
two
my
years ago.
God.
Nah, in full seriousness, I did start probably about eight or 9 years ago. I did it for my dad. Then I got a job at an agency a year later when I was 14. Rocked up first day, dad's suit. Oh boy. But yeah, and then I just kind of got into terms with SEO, and it was really one of those cases. I walked in, I trained the team, and I knew instantly I was doing what I loved. And here I am 8 years later. I now have an agency of my own. That we're probably on track to double again this year, and wouldn't change a thing.
Amazing, amazing. That sounds amazing. And it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome,
Thank
Harry.
you. Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah. And what are the SEO aspects that you are focusing on in particular these days?
Sure. So I would much say that it is very similar, that you're not focusing on over optimization. I think SEO is much more about brands at the moment. It really is about making sure that your brand checks out and everything flows from that. But other than that, we're doing a lot of work around international SEO, because I feel we just published a white paper on it, and I feel that a lot of people still aren't nailing or even close to nailing how they're rolling out international campaigns, which is quite important.
Indeed. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And welcome
Thank
once
you.
again.
Cheers.
Well, moving to the last but not the least expert, and that's Gerry White. Everyone knows him, I believe, because he has been to this show before. That was in April last year, and I got the opportunity to host him once again. I'm super happy. Jerry, yeah, stage
Hey.
is yours.
Hi. So yeah, I'm sort of feeling quite old now. I've been in this game for like 25 years or something like that. The first website I ever built was in Word, which shows just how old I am and everything. I've been working on Dreamweaver and all these technologies that no young people has ever heard of nowadays, which is making me feel really quite old. But different journey. I basically work client side, agency side for the last 20 years, and now at the moment I work with Just Eat, who's one of the largest takeaway delivery companies in the world, which is quite good fun, but very, very challenging. And yeah, in my spare time, I sort of run a small meetup in the UK called Take It Offline, which is good fun. It basically involves getting professionals to kind of chat about what's bothering them, what's interesting to them, along with client-side people, agency-side people, and everything else like that. It's quite good fun talking to people in a pub.
Cool. That sounds good. And yes, I heard about the event that you organized. It was really amazing. A lot of photographs on my Facebook feed everywhere. Yeah, people are talking about it. It's a good fun.
Yeah, that was a bit of an accident, that one, when sort of 120 people turned up, and I kind of expected about 20 to 30. Yeah, we nearly ran out of beer.
Yeah, I can imagine. But yeah, it's good, right? More cozy, and then it's winter.
Oh,
So
it was good.
why not?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like
perfect.
hangover Thursday.
Yeah. And Jerry, well, you're contributing a lot. I mean, I see a lot of articles from you and you're speaking at events. So I think you're focusing on multiple things. But what is one thing that you're focusing on right now and you want to be, king of that thing?
So the one thing that I find most interesting at the moment is more around the entity stuff. Is the other two people have said we are moving on from the 10 blue links. Nowadays, Google's looking very differently at how to sort of answer search queries. And so basically, it's all about entities. It's all about how your website is presented into it and the kind of the data behind it and how that works. I think that's fairly critical. The other side that's really interesting at the moment is the movement to PWAs, which is like the mobile apps which are built in HTML. And I find that kind of stuff really, really exciting at the moment. I think that's really definitely the future. Everybody thinks it's apps, but now I think it's kind of going to be a transitional kind of thing, and that's coming very soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and welcome once again, Jerry. It's a pleasure to have you. All right, guys, so now I think we are done with the first one, which is introductions, and you're all waiting for the amazing stuff from these guys. We have three amazing experts and three websites, which are helioswatchstore.com, and then we have yaccess.com, and then we have paisabazar.com. So let's start with Jerry, because he's already in the flow, and he would be talking about yaccess.com. So Jerry, the stage is all yours now. Go ahead.
Okay, right. Well, I'm going to try and present my screen, see if this works. It usually doesn't, but okay. So
this one is working.
Hang on a second. Amazing. Cool. Right. Let me just start. So I had a look at yaccess.com, and it's. Can you guys see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Really quite a good website, actually, well put together. There weren't major issues. It's built on WordPress, which usually gives it kind of quite a good head start. There are multiple seemingly integrations of WordPress or templates. So I was kind of finding that there were different issues across the site. First issue I did find was the fact that sometimes the text wasn't totally readable in that middle bit, which was kind of the key call to action. Quick look at the backlink audit, and it kind of came back as a really high toxic score. But when I started investigating a little bit further, sorry, this is the traffic analytics. So this basically suggests that, generally speaking, they've got good traffic from everywhere, particularly from India, which is about 60% of it. But there is good traffic worldwide. They've got hreflang. So one of the things to note is that some other domains actually outperform in different countries. So particularly in places like Australia, they've got a dedicated domain. So not too worried about the traffic by countries being exclusively India at that point. This is what I meant by the fact that some text was harder to read. I can't even read what that text actually says. But basically, this is kind of the main call to action. And if that doesn't quite work, something like a small div behind it, which kind of pushes out the text, would just help it pop out of the screen. That said, you'd block the guy's face, but maybe the call to action is more important, or maybe sort of off-center it. One of the things that I did notice was that they had pretty poor performance in terms of lighthouse audits, which is a way of kind of checking the performance, the sort of like the page speed performance. And this was something that was quite concerning when I started investigating into it. I had a look at it in the dev.measure tool, which is a Google tool. And basically it means that you can kind of run these audits and share them across. So awesome that you've got 100 on the SEO, but in fairness, that audit's not very good. It basically says, have you kind of done the very basics rather than things like that. Sites that don't get 100 are kind of more concerning than sites that do. But the performance part of it's the part where it's the most important, especially as most of the people in India are looking at it on a mobile site. I did check it to check it was mobile friendly, and that passed without any problem. But when I looked at the performance, there was some significant issues. And all of these are kind of quite important to kind of resolve. The eliminate render blocking resources. There were a lot of scripts and fonts and similar things like that that were loaded up. And these things kind of really slow down the page, particularly fonts. If you can do anything, reduce the amount of fonts or the size of the fonts that are being loaded into the page, especially if they're not actually critical to the performance or the display of the page. As I mentioned, I did take a look at the I did sort of crawl it using Semrush, of course, and came back with a few errors. There were redirect chains and loops, which were kind of quite bad. So I took a quick look into that. And the chains were actually 4. This basically meant it was coming from HTTP to HTTPS to HTTP with a trailing slash, without a trailing slash. And this repeated throughout. So fixing all of these internal links, I think, is one of the most important things that you can kind of do to relatively fix things quickly. So there's probably a set of rules in the background, which is do not link to the HTTP version because you're on HTTPS. And when you do, make sure that you redirect directly to the end URL rather than to intermediate URLs. While these chains aren't a major issue for both search engines and users, the sheer amount of them will be kind of more of an issue. And in some ways, it's probably a performance issue on the server. Every time they hit one of these redirects, especially on a mobile device, what you're doing is you're kind of having to send another round trip back through to the server, back to the browser, back to the server. And this happened again and again. The other thing that I kind of noticed is images are actually being hot linked off the site. The reason I kind of noticed this was because I was looking for HTTPS issues. And this is one of the ones that came up in Semrush. And it said that you're actually loading images off from a third-party site. The problem here is that if that third-party site goes down, if they change the image, or even if they change it into a rude image or something worse, because one guy found out that lots of websites were hot linking from his images and he got annoyed, so he put a script in to kind of change all the images into naughty images just to kind of annoy them. So don't hot link images from external sites. There's a number of these you can see like here. So just go through them. Semrush can help you do this, and you can go through, find all the ones that are hot linked and make sure they're hosted yourself. As I mentioned, it's developed on WordPress, which means that it's a really positive thing. It means that you can use very simple plugins to kind of improve things. You've used Yoast there, which is a really good thing. So it's all kind of a big tick there. The one thing I did notice when I was looking at the source code was that there is no open graph image. This open graph image means that when you share it on Facebook, it kind of comes out really well. High click-through rate, which is really positive. And the Twitter image that you've used is a tiny little 25 by 25 icon. So that's just not going to get used. Internal linking, always use where it's going to go. So link where it says UK, for instance, so UK visa information, or read more about UK visa information rather than read more. And the reason why is that these internal links are so critical to the site performance in Google. One of the things that I've done in the past is gone through and improved internal linking, and it's had a significant impact on every site I've worked on. So that's always one of my first jobs to do. The other thing is your copyright statement says 2017 and not 2019. It's a trusting, nothing else. So if you can do that one thing, such an easy quick fix, and it will kind of improve the trust. So going back to the performance, one of the things that you can look at is the performance according to end users. And this is using something called the Chrome User Experience Report. This is totally free by Google, and it uses real users out there. I use this in combination with the Semrush speed indexing, so you can kind of get multiple views of it, but this one's by real users. And you can see already that 86% of your users are using mobile phone devices. I mean, you can see this in Google Analytics if you've got Google Analytics running, but I kind of didn't have access to your data, so this was kind of an easy way for me to take a quick look inside. Everyone's on 4G, which is really good, or at least 70% are on 4G, 30% were on 3G, and almost nobody is on anything slower. It seems like in India, the connections on mobile devices is really fast, which is really, really good. Of course, this means that you've really got to pay attention to how mobile page speed works, and this is where it started to get concerning. About 40% of people were finding it was actually quite slow. It's improving from 47%, but that's probably more due to the fact that people's internet connection speed is improving rather than anything else that's happening on the site. So it's definitely worth investigating that. First content full paint, same thing. It means that basically the first time somebody sees something on their screen, it's considered slow by Google. And I mentioned before, the fonts can take up 40% of your overall size. So if you can just reduce down the fonts, the page speed will significantly improve. If you can remove the fonts, as in you use native fonts, web-safe fonts, that's definitely what I'd recommend. I was looking at the site trying to figure out where the fonts were being used, and I couldn't quite do it. The total amount of content being downloaded is 2.3 megabytes, and it took 27 seconds on most of my tests. The other thing that I kind of noticed was that there's no calls to action in the AMP pages. Now, you have got AMP pages, which are really good, because when people land into the site, they see a much lighter, much faster version. And for most of the content, there's no reason not to use AMP. I'd strongly recommend using AMP. But what I did notice is that when you looked at the AMP version rather than the desktop version, the call to action's gone, so you don't get conversions off the back of it, and that's fairly critical. And that's the main stuff that I had a look at. So, yeah. Any questions?
That was quick. Well,
Sorry.
you covered a lot of things, and you took only 9 minutes. You're amazing. Generally, everyone takes more than 10 minutes, and that makes my life super tough. But 10 minutes super easy. Thank you so much for sharing a lot of interesting things. And now I would like to invite Harry and Aji if they have something to add on this website, which Gerry didn't cover because he doesn't like that. Or yeah.
Sure.
So who wants to add here?
Harry, if you want to go, you can go.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. So yeah, I love that. I think it was really good covering off the different kind of elements that they're doing. Even to some of the technical elements, there's so many things there that I think people overlook because they're too focused on trying to get the underlying, over optimization parts done. But one thing I did pick up on that was a little bit strange is their incorrect language tags that they've set. So in the code, they've set a lang of ENUS. But even if you go to something like their Melbourne landing page, I'm looking at one targeted towards Australia, it's still targeting that US language. It would be great to see them use like an ENAU or a different kind of language targeting.
Yeah, I did notice that in the hreflang they'd correctly identified it, but in the actual code they did ENUS.
Exactly.
I think that's one of those WordPress plugin sort of issues where it's actually quite hard to change it. But as you say, it's such a quick win. It's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks for adding that, Harry. Aji?
Overall bounce rate that they have, and almost 80% from Google, where majority is coming from search organic. So that means the bounce rate which they are getting is certainly hampering. So we need to look at it, why that is happening, and website and bouncing back. If that is happening for your major keywords, then that is certainly a problem and one need to look at it. If Google is sending some people to your website, are they not happy with your website, then why will Google send it to you? And second is on also, they have not used the right keywords. If they want to rank on visa consultant, then even on the best of their blogs, they might want to tag that on their title saying that consultant, because the overall value of the website will go up for those important keywords. And I think Gerry has covered most of the things. I just wanted to add,
Yeah, so when it came to the bounce rate, you're absolutely right, because it's highly mobile. Because most people are coming in from a mobile device. If they're coming into the AMP pages and the AMP pages don't have those good calls to actions, then you're right, the bounce rate would probably be really, really high. The other kind of side to it, of course, is the fact they've got good long articles for a lot of strong keywords. I mean, it was very much a great content site. So you're probably only going to look at one page. So the bounce rate, I think, would be quite high naturally, so I don't think that's necessarily a big problem. However, what you do want to do is make sure that, as I say, you've got really good calls to action to kind of figure out why they're not kind of progressing through the site, particularly on the keywords. But yeah, you're right there. it's definitely worth investigating which pages have got the highest bounce rate and if there's anything that can be done to kind of just improve that.
Exactly. And normally Google does this. So if there's a particular keyword and in that keyword there are top 10 ranking websites, and these people are not having this much of bounce rate, then you have more bounce rate than that, then that is considered bad. And if in certain industry bounce rate because one page suffice the content, then it is not a problem. Because I did look at the competitors just on the surface level.
Yeah,
Cool.
agreed.
Thank you so much for writing that, guys. And that makes it kind of complete SEO audit, I would say. So thank you so much once again. And I think now it's the time to move to the next questions. And guys, everyone, so you keep asking questions and I'll take your questions once we're done with the real content. So moving to the next website, which is helioswatchstore.com, and Harry will be talking about that. So Harry, the stage is all yours now.
Awesome. I'm just going to share my screen.
So,
Great. Tell me if that's come through.
yes.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to be talking about Helios Watch Store here. Now, this is a good example of a website that is has a few things going for it, but has fallen into that unfortunate trap of trying too hard to optimize everything for SEO, right? Now, I say that with a few things in mind, right? So what I mean when I say someone's trying too hard, it is that they're, doing things like keyword stuffing or optimization techniques that really fall into the doing for the sole intent of improving your SEO standing. Now, a good SEO tactic is to do something that improves the ability for users or search engines to crawl a site rather than just kind of stuffing content in for the sake of SEO. The other major thing that we've got here is a large kind of top-click backlink profile. So this was kind of touched upon in the previous audit, but what I can see is a lot of, quite an alarming amount seem to be coming through at different periods. So that's going to be something that's going to be looked at by Google, whereas there's a lot of backlinks coming through over November, December in that 1 month period, and then it completely drops off. So those kind of things raise alarm bells, right? In this case, a lot of those sites going through manually were PBNs or sites that were definitely you don't want linking to you. Now, tactics like this would have worked fine several years ago, but I think we really need to, as a community, take a broader understanding around how links and backlinks work, right? So I use the acronym D&D, right? Dungeons and Dragons. That's what I like to call it. And Dungeons and Dragons is D&D is three key kind of metrics you want to look at when you're doing link acquisition, or even just wondering, is it worth getting a backlink from this place? So the first thing we talk about is do follow, right? So do follow is the process of acquiring links that pass on equity. Now, it's not to say that no follow links aren't important. You definitely want a diversified amount, but when you're going for those heavy hitters, you want to make sure they're passing on that. So you can easily right-click a link and pull up the inspect tool and see here, which is an example of a follow and which is a rel no follow link. So that's one key item. The other is that niche relevancy, right? So niche relevancy talks about, and I actually think this is probably one of the most important ones, is obtaining links that are actually relevant to what they're getting linked to, right? So a good example of this is a skincare blog linking to a skincare product, right? Smiley face for that, that's niche relevant. A bad link is a skincare blog maybe linking to a financial advice blog. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of niche relevance there, and that is such a big thing that Google's looking at when they're determining how these links are important. Anyone can get a ton of links from high DA websites, but they're only really counted or even passed on as credible if they are seemingly natural. And seemingly natural links are niche relevant because you're not just going to be kind of linking different sites around with no consideration for how they work back. The other thing I like to say is the domain authority piece. So we say at StudioHawk, artisanal, handcrafted backlinks, right? So that obviously you can't handcraft a backlink, but it really is about quality, not quantity here. So we've got, if you look at that report previously, there's hundreds of random non-niche relevant backlinks kind of coming through or willy-nilly. We want to focus on the quality because having just 5 or even 10 quality backlinks from niche relevant sources that I do follow is going to make a much larger difference than having hundreds that don't really cover it off or have that niche relevancy. So we're talking about referring domains here, making sure that DA is above 20 ideally. But remember, DA is just a metric. What you should really be looking at is how much traffic is coming through, right? If a website has a strong amount of traffic but a lower DA, it doesn't really matter. You want to focus on websites that have a natural, consistent flow of traffic coming through. That's always going to be more important. So definitely look at the different scores you can get for that. Now that's the link acquisition part. I wanted to cover that off because I feel like there was quite an issue there. But here are some of the other more keyword stuffing or over optimization techniques that are going on here. So this is an example of something you might find in the footer of something on the Helios page. Now you'll notice here that this is gibberish, right? Quite simply put, there's no user that would ever look at this and be like, boy, am I glad I found the Swish and Premium watches zone, right? Oh man, I'm just going to delve through this. This is just a case of watches in Mumbai, watches in New Delhi. It very much is content or a section for the sole intent purpose of SEO. This doesn't give users anything. This isn't helping search engines with anything. This just looks deceptive, right? This is a deceptive kind of example. So I would suggest just completely removing this kind of stuff. As a user, it looks weird, poor. I probably wouldn't make a purchasing transaction from a site with something like this. And from a user search engine's perspective, it's much the same. And the other thing here is we're in 2019 and we still got that 2017 footer. I know it's a minor thing, but it is really, especially with these e-commerce stores, you need to build up that trust. People are wary of kind of giving you their money, their hard-earned money, and anything you can do to make it a little bit easier for them to trust you is always appreciated. Another example of this is just on some of the pages. So there's a lot of different pages on this site. I would say this site is spread very thin with the amount of pages. And if I were you, I would look at compiling it or centralizing it into a few different more unique sources. So here again is one of those kind of the scripts and sections under a category page that are just kind of made, and this might look fine, but when you look at 5 different ones from different watches in the same kind of category, it's all the exact same content. So heaps of duplicate content issues, just renamed for different products, like police watches online at Helios, the watch store, police watches. It's just centralizing this a lot more rather than maybe creating a page just for the sake of having SEO. You'll find you're getting much better benefits. There is we've been working on a massive international company at the moment that has run into several issues with their crawl budget. And what we mean by that is how many pages Google wants to crawl. And I think most people are finding now, if you look online, that the less pages you have, the less kind of trashy or pages that aren't serving a purpose you have, the more value it puts in the pages that are serving a purpose and can really help centralize that SEO equity. So definitely something to consider. Going through some of the other items as well, aside from this over optimization, we've got things like missing H1 headings, which is pretty standard and pretty common. We've had to do this for a large Australian brand recently. A lot of people have actually told me that H1 headings aren't important anymore. And I think that might be true to a certain extent. But here in Australia, all our large retailers have been using those H1 tags. And the client we were working with was electing to not use a H1 tag. After implementation of that H1 tag, we saw homepage traffic increase by 12% and position coverage increase by a further 6%. What's that mean in dollars? Well, that was worth about $15 million for a H1 tag. You call that the $15 million H1. Now, this might not be worth the exact same here, but it really is a case of just covering off what you can. Again, it really is, especially when we're going into those over optimization territories, it's nice to have these H1 headings that we can fix up quickly, maybe put at the top of the page and say, Helios watches, the best store for watches in India, whatever it may be that you come up with, but just something that people can really understand what the page is about at a glance. Another thing, broken external links. So definitely when you're linking out, it's quite easy to install plugins or even just to use crawlers like Semrush to go through and tell you which links are broken. Google is obviously performing these crawls, and when they see you linking out to broken websites, it doesn't look good. It's a signal to them that you're not properly maintaining the site, which is really not what you want. Press for time here, but going through the page speed as well. So as an e-commerce, I mean, I'm sure everyone's read that Amazon study on their page speed and how it affects their revenue. If you haven't, go check it out. But it really is so important when you've got an e-commerce store to be loading as fast as you can. So you can see some of the opportunities here where you optimize the images, deferring on your CSS, serve images in next-gen formats, limited render blocking resources. I would even suggest putting it on a faster server potentially. But these are all things that you should be covering off, and I would be placing very high value on from an e-commerce perspective. The last thing I wanted to touch upon is creating a bit more original content on these product pages. Right now, the whole website kind of feels like it was scraped from somewhere else, almost like you plugged into the API of another watch store or something and started just fetching descriptions and plugging them into your website. What it would be great to see is just some original content around those different watches. So you've got specifications or something like that. We want to just tidy that up so that maybe it reveals a little bit more about the particular product. But largely, that was some of the major kind of issues I had. But I think there is some great opportunity within the website. It really just needs a bit of spring cleaning. Clean up some of those pages. Don't worry so much about making sure everything's got the right keyword and stuff. I think really you'll take a lot of value in just doing things a little bit more naturally, and I think search engines will appreciate that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Harry. It was really interesting, and you covered a lot of aspects like Gerry, and you took the equally amount of time as well. So you guys are super organized. Thank you so much. All right, so now I would like to request Gerry and Aji if they want to add something.
So one of the things that I did notice was I put it into the structured testing tool, the product page and the home page. Both of them lack the sort of the markup, so schema markup, or I generally use JSON-LD. There's organizational markup which sort of says which the social channels are. That you can even link through things like WhatsApp and everything else like that nowadays, which is very, very big. I definitely look at doing that. When you sort of look for the brand Helios watches, you don't see the sort of like the information panel coming up. I'm trying to remember what people call it nowadays, but everyone seems to be calling it knowledge panel box and things like that. So putting structured data on the homepage is really simple. It's just a small JSON file. There's loads of creators out there. I think even Semrush has got a creator as well. Also, when I looked at the product page, I can share my screen very quickly. If I take a look at this, one of the things that you can't see, where's the presentation mode one? There we go. It basically says, the name isn't there, the brand isn't there, the description's not there, the image isn't there, and any other information isn't there. Now, the price and the currency is there, which is a great start, but the rest of it's crucial for it to actually show up, for Google to be able to kind of see it. So I definitely look at kind of fixing that up.
Thanks for writing that, Gerry. Really useful stuff. Aji, do you want to add something?
Yeah. I think the overall, whenever you look at e-commerce, so in e-commerce, what you need to do is, because most of the traffic might be driven at the category level. So the category and the product integration has to be done. A lot of articles, which whether is anything, has to category. So there are few occasions where product pages drives more traffic than the category pages. I think like have added that value that most of the product does not have enough content. So once you integrate it, maybe if they can even try with one particular category and the product with more content, maybe they can see the jump directly, and that they can experience and they can see value. And I think for each of this, they can also look at some of the video integrations, as a lot of people will like to know more about their products at the category level, as well as at the product level, some video level integration that will also help them in ranking better today.
Yeah, thank you so much for adding that, Aji. That was useful as well. So thank you so much once again, guys. I think you covered a lot of things and prepared their roadmap for next 6 months or so, or maybe 3 months if they're too fast. All right, so we can now move to the third website, which is paisabazaar.com. and Aji would be talking about that. So Aji, it's all yours now.
All right, sure. So I'll just, is my screen audible? Seen? Is it visible?
Yes. Can you move to the
All right,
presentation
all right.
mode?
So,
Yeah, that's perfect.
yeah, all right. I'll just skip. That is, whether it's digital or SEO, there are so many things that one can do. And putting that into a structure helps you to see where to start and where to end. And I think Elon Musk has put it very nicely that unless we can see anything as a semantic tree, it's very difficult for you to get the knowledge out of it. So what I'll today do is I can skip all of those things which I've already covered about. So these are some of the. Okay. So if I go directly here, if this is the website that I'm looking at, they get almost 7+ million traffic on a monthly basis, which is a relatively very large site with a lot of traffic. And if you look at it, so I will start with this, that how important is search market for you? That is where you should look at it. Most of the time, since we are talking about India and Australia as well as UK, people have matured in terms of the digital sphere, and they know that whether they require SEO or not. In India, a lot of people do SEO without even knowing whether SEO will have an impact on them. But if you look at this particular website, they get almost the 80% of the traffic from search, where if you see majority of them coming from organic search. So SEO is certainly the most important thing that they should be looking at, as that is bringing them the traffic. And when you look at this, since they already have a lot of traffic coming in and they're very good at SEO, and this is being said that in SEO the stronger get stronger and the weaker get weaker, and that is relatively true in all the phases today. Whoever has more money gets more money, kind of a scenario. And I think they need to focus more on SEO to get there. So that's the point number one. There's no, and when I look at SEO, I will divide that SEO into different categories. So one is you have a setup and you have all the structural related SEO that you can do. And then you have a keyword mapping that needs to be done. And again, we can do a lot of SEO, but what is the purpose of doing SEO? And if you know that my short-term purpose is very different from a long-term purpose, then I can optimize my website and I can do analysis of my website from a short-term perspective rather than from a long-term perspective. So this is one idea that I certainly want to leave with all of you, is that SEO is not only for long-term, sometimes this can also give you short-term result as well by looking at certain areas and bring, as Harry was mentioning, that a small change increase the top line by 15 million. And these are things that can happen if you focus on where do we want to look at it. So let's look at it step by step. If you look at this, which I will say the whole website and the URL structure as well as the how the website is done. I didn't check the technical stack, that how they have built the technical stack, since they get 11 million traffic. So I'm sure that their technical stack is relatively good. But if you see, their pages are not mobile friendly. Okay, so that in itself is not something which is really good. Okay, and I looked at their industry. And in their industry, other competitors who are ranking on the top 10 are getting a 20% bounce rate or a 30% bounce rate. And the currently at Paisa Bazaar, what we are looking at is almost like a 60% bounce rate. So that does not give a good reflection on the traffic which is coming from Google for sure. So that can be looked at it. Again, it's a comparative study with respect to your competition. So you can see where do you stand with respect to that. And as I said, Google has moved a lot from smaller aspect, that how do you present your content and how do you get the links and etc. What they are looking at is whether you are adding enough signals which are either user related signals or traffic related signals or even link and content related signals. Like sometimes if you add a lot of links in a short period and after that you don't maintain that links, your rankings will certainly go down because it will as a spike rather than as a consistent one. Even at the AMP level, I think there are areas of issues which can be corrected, and they need to go, as a lot of people consume the content on mobile. So this is very important that we look at it. And then if you look at it from a domain perspective, many of the structural thing is correctly done, as in terms of their domain is renewed for almost 10 20 years, which is good. Those are smaller things that can be taken care of at the structural level. So my suggestion is that whatever is easier to do in terms of structure, one should do it, and whichever is complicated, take time to do it, but don't leave it there. Okay, and then look at all the broken links, speed of the website, and downtime, as Harry has mentioned that most of the time we don't look at the broken links or the speed of the website. These are all important factors. I'll not go detail into it because other speakers have looked at it and other speakers have shown that how important this is. So you can use SEMrush to find out the broken links, or even you can look at Google Analytics and Google Webmaster to see the speed time as well as also the downtime. Sometimes it might also happen that time to time your website is going down, so that also can be looked at it. So I'm not looking at it, but overall, if you see from a crawlability perspective, indexability perspective, and rankability perspective, so these are three areas that one should look at it. I don't see any problem in their crawlability, but certainly be interested in is to look at it that if there is a new because they are looking at finance. In case if there is a budget coming in, and the next day a lot of people are searching for budget and personal loan rates, and whether their website will be able to rank better than other people in a shorter time. So my best time was around 7 minutes. So within 7 minutes I was able to put a website online or put a page online, and I was able to get it crawled, and I was able to get it indexed and get it ranked. And these are very important thing in certain industry, and I'm sure that in their industry also this is important. And I'm specifically talking about entertainment industry, where a movie used to get launched or a new news used to come, and we had to rank it really quick, index it, and rank it. Those are areas where in crawlability and indexability will be there. Let me go into the rankability part of it. Now, when I did a keyword analysis for their website, what I saw is that there are certain keywords which are very high in terms of traffic or in terms of search volume, and then there are other keywords which are less in terms of search volume. So I just took one example, which is personal loan, just to show you that how we can look at that and improve the ranking. Okay, so if you see, Paisabazaar has around 93,000 pages. So this is one part of it, content part of it or information part of it. Why does Google send people to your website? It is basically you are providing a lot of content, or you are very authoritative in that particular industry. I'm just looking at content and info part of it. So they have 93,000 pages on the website, and around personal loan itself, they have around 11,000 pages on it. Okay, so that tells you that they have enough content. But if you look at their competitors, which is Capital First, which is ranking on the top, they have only 804 pages, and for personal loan they have 269 pages. Where they have less content, but still they are ranking. I'll show you why they are ranking. And if you look at their next competitor, which is HDFC Bank, they have certainly more pages than what. So what you need to look at is also around the structures. Now, around personal loan, when you do a keyword analysis just on one particular keyword, personal loan, so there are other things that people are searching for, like personal loan apps and others. What you can also do is add and content around these particular keywords, so that your content can be seen as one website which is offering a lot more information about personal loan related keyword. And if personal loan apps is second, third related searches, why are you missing on such kind of a thing when you're already ranking for personal loan in top 15, top 20? So maybe you will be able to rank in top 10 as well. So these are all low hanging fruits which can enable you to rank faster and get you more traffic. And also the structure of the URL. The URL was done right, but you can amplify that further compared to other people. And what I also saw is, as I mentioned in the other discussion, is that Sybil, what and how it works, how to get free Sybil score report. And in certain cases, if there are important keywords that we have like personal loan and others, even on the home page, you compare and apply for loans and credit cards. At times, it's an important keyword. Then we can also put a hyphen and say personal keyword, personal loan, and the top 2 or 3 keyword, which is the most important keyword in your industry. That can give you a lot of traffic. Now, this is very interesting to look at it. See, from a backlink perspective, I think this is what Paisabazaar's backlink looks like. And if you see the competitors, suddenly they have a lot of links that they have gotten, probably because of which their ranking has gone up of content. On the other hand, their other competitors has a consistent linking. So from a linking perspective, I didn't go deep dive into it. How many links are bad? How many links are good? So overall, what you need to look at it is from the overall structure perspective, whether your structure is very clear or not. If there are at least 30, 40 checklists that you need to look at it from a structure perspective, whether your keyword mapping is pages or not, and then whether your pages are in the right place or not, and whether each of the pages is optimized or not, which again, there are plenty of tools and everything available. SEMrush can do an amazing job of it. And if you look at their and A lot of ranking.
I cannot see you. I cannot hear you properly, Aji. Your voice is breaking a bit.
Is it better?
Yeah.
All right. So I think this is, I just put a structure around it, saying that understand where your keywords are, where your setup and hygiene and structures are. And then based on that, if you optimize different areas, there are multiple options that I have seen. And if those things are corrected, probably you can get a 10 to 20% of jump in the traffic altogether. Hello.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much, Aji, for sharing that. Now I would like to invite Gerry and Harry if they want to. Gerry and Harry, well, that sounds nice. So Gerry and Harry, if you want to add something here on this website.
I haven't got much to add, Harry.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty. I think most of that's covered off. Couple really minor things just around title tags and fleshing out some of the pages on the web. Like there's just a lot of pages out there, credit reports specifically, that are more, well, that are being indexed but have like 9 words sitting on them. It'd be good to see some more words on that. And but other than that, I think you've done a great job going through most of the major issues there. The rest is pretty basic.
Absolutely.
Just forgot to add one pointer there. That is, they have a lot of pages with respect to personal loan and IT, like personal loan Coimbatore, personal loan this. And I saw in many of these pages, they have in content. It's a very thing in today's world to have it. So you need to look at that. As we go deep into this area, because that can be a study, to give a structure around it, of course, to do.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Aji, once again. That was amazing. So I think we covered a lot of things for this episode as well. And I think this is after at least 20 episodes that, we covered everything and we still have 13, 14 minutes. Amazing, guys. I'm really happy and thank you so much. So I think now we can quickly jump to the questions. We have a lot of questions. So let's pick them one by one. So let's start with the first question, which is from Abhishek saying, the question is, how long does Googlebot stays on a page, and how many links are recommended to be placed on a page to make sure that Google is, ranking them or at least crawling them? So, Gerry, would you like to answer that? Because you're master
yeah, sure.
answer.
So this is quite a hot topic at the moment. Google kind of visits a page twice. The first time it kind of goes through the page, it literally takes all of the HTML and processes it without JavaScript, doesn't render it and everything else like that. So what it tends to do is look through the entire page, finds all the content, finds all the links. So it's very, very quick. Now, the question sounds like it's asking about something called lazy loading almost, or something similar. So if you've got content that gets loaded into the page, it kind of has to be loaded in that first render. It doesn't kind of interact with the page. It doesn't scroll down. It doesn't do other things like that. So if you've got content that needs to be indexed, it needs to be seen by Google, then make sure it's in that first load, if it's loaded in JavaScript. So, and Google won't always visit that on the first time. It can take weeks, several weeks, in fact, for it to kind of come back and do that second render. And it won't necessarily do 100% of a site. So it might only do like 10, 20, 50, 90% of a site. It generally does do everything, but it just can take a time, especially on larger sites. I mean, Harry mentioned earlier on about crawl budget. When you've got JavaScript content being loaded into a site, that's when it gets absolutely critical.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for answering that. And then I have a related question. Maybe you can answer that as well, which is, does Googlebot crawl videos if they appear on the page after, let's say, 10, 20 seconds? What do you think about it?
So that's a good question. The short version is no. Google doesn't always recognize videos in that way. What Google does do is, if I can just share my screen very quickly, load over here. Here's one I prepared earlier. Where's the presenting? Google has actually got a page on how to get videos indexed. And basically what you need to do is add the structured data. This is really easy to do once you've done it a few times. There's loads of builders out on the web. It's very simple to do. And Google even gives you the content to do. So basically you put a block of JSON-LD, explains what the video is. Google will come along, see that, and that's how to get it indexed. It's not about putting the video directly on the page, but putting the video on the page and the relevant markup. Of course, the other way to do it is to use XML sitemaps. So if you've got a lot of videos, XML sitemaps is still a recommended way of getting your videos found, indexed, and seen by Google. Just putting them on the page, unfortunately, doesn't work. It can do sometimes, but it's so hit and miss, it's not my recommended approach.
Definitely. And I think one more thing that we should consider. So here, this person asked the question that if video appears in 10 or 20 seconds. Well, I would say if a video is appearing in 20 seconds, then even you cannot expect all the users to stay there for 20 seconds to see that content. And if it's amazing content, you should make sure that it is there straight away. And then users can also see that, because you are putting this content for users. Bots are the secondary thing, right? So you should focus on user experience first. And I don't think, I mean, I would ever be waiting for 20 seconds. Okay, so this website video will load in 20 seconds. I should wait. No, I don't think I have that much time. So I think that should be your first focus. Then considering how bots see this content. So, and Gerry, of course, answered the question about bot. So I would also consider user experience here. All right. So let's move to the next question. And well, this question is about the topic that Harry covered in his presentation about header tags. So the question is, how many times should we use H2 in our content? Maybe Harry, you can also speak about H1 once again. Like, how do you think heading tags are important?
Totally. So heading tags should flow in a logical manner. What I mean by that is, to use a H2, you should already have a H1 on the website. So they make sense. They sound more complex than they are, let's be honest. So H1 is your title of the page, kind of sums it up. Your H2 is a subheading, H3, so forth, right? But you shouldn't be using one without the other. So you shouldn't be able to jump to a H3 without using a H2, right? So how many times should you use a H2 in the content? That's kind of like asking how long is a piece of string. If you've got a H1 on the website, then yes, you can start using a H2 now. If you've got like a 300 word piece, you probably realistically only need to use one H2 heading. But if you've got a 10,000 word piece of content up on the blog or something, you'll probably want to be using more H2 headings. It's not like a keyword density thing where you can say like 2 to 3% or something like that. It really is how long is a piece of string. If it fits naturally and reads naturally and you call attention to the specific headings you want, then use it as often as you want. And then if you have subheadings under the subheading, use H3s. But it really is, it's not a cut and dry, use it 6 times on every page kind of answer, unfortunately.
Thank you so much for answering that, Harry. And I think, again, touching the user experience aspect here. So what I think is, well, if you think about basic web development principles and basic HTML, I'm not talking about CSS here. I know you can, fancy things using that. But if you just think about basic web development principles, then H1 is a bit bigger in size, and then H2 is a little smaller, and so on. So if you're using these titles wisely, then that makes your content more readable for users, right?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about, let's say, best phones in the industry, so that should, if that's your title, then maybe you can cover iPhone, or maybe iOS phones, and then you can cover Android phones and so on. So that can be a subheading. So that makes it more natural when somebody is reading. I think that makes more sense to this person. So I would just say that maybe when you are thinking about this, so you should also consider this using or considering the basic web development or reading principles.
Can I add something?
So of course you can.
Yeah. So, even when you're doing H1 and H2, one of the things that you can do is keyword analysis around that particular big keyword and see which are the other keywords which are really related. And your article may not be complete if you are not addressing all of the important factor around it. So like, say, for example, in case of personal home loans, and a lot of looking at personal home loans, terms and conditions. And if do you want to use an H2 tag, or do you want that as a different page after that? All of those statisticians, and H2 is not just as a design aspect, but it's a very semantic tag. So it helps the search engine to understand your web pages better. So it's for important pages, I will say that spend a lot to understand what will go into H1 and H2. For smaller stuff, you can be a little more liberal in terms of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for adding that, Aji. That's really important from a SEO perspective, but I think both of us missed that. So thank you so much for covering that. All right. So moving to the next question, which is I think for Gerry because he covered the topic about AMP in his presentation. So this is basically with AMP, how can we track analytics best?
Yeah, so this is actually a common issue, and I'm not going to lie, we're actually guilty of this on the Take It Offline website. It is really common for people to use plugins to kind of create the AMP pages and not kind of audit them and not put analytics on it properly. The good news is there's a really comprehensive guide on how to do analytics properly by a guy called Simo Ava. It's spelled SIMOAHV. Do you know what? I can't spell his surname. But yeah, basically, if you just Google Simo Ava AMP Analytics, he's got written the most comprehensive guide. One of the kind of minor problems with AMP is the fact that you go from two different domains sometimes, because one is hosted on Google CDN and one's hosted on your own. So, of course, Google using first-party cookies means that you'll almost be treated as separate users unless you pass that user information across. So you get twice as many users unless you kind of stitch together the sessions. The good news is Simo talks about how to do this using Google Tag Manager, and it's not simple, but it's a guide which can be followed fairly easily. So yeah, go use his guide, use Google Tag Manager, and you can basically track users across. Now, at the moment, AMP is fairly restrictive in that you can only use really Google Analytics and some other kind of serious analytics packages. You can't put all of the same tracking as you do on your main website. And that's one of the kind of big issues that some people find. They can't do retargeting, they can't do some of the other stuff they wanted to do beforehand. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, it definitely does. And guys, I would in general recommend you to follow this guy, Simo Ahava. I don't know how to pronounce his surname, but it's I think Simo Ahava, and he's an amazing guy when it comes to Google Analytics. I would, I consider him as like king of that particular part, and he's really amazing, and his blog is amazing as well. So you should definitely check that. All right. So moving to the next question. Oh, sorry, Gerry, you were saying something.
No, he's also an incredibly nice guy. If you ever get to meet him, he's the nicest guy around as well.
Yeah, that's true as well. All right, so moving to the next question, which is about page speed. So which is more important, reducing the doc size or optimizing the JavaScript? Who wants to take that?
I can take that.
Sure, go ahead, Ajay.
Okay. See, when you look at page speed, there are two aspects. One you need to understand is the more that you get, which is basically from A, B, C, D, and a lot of people get into that. Okay, mine is bad. So your score, but your speed may not be bad. So that's one part of it. Okay. So sometimes your web page is that you don't need all of those integration to be done. But when it comes to a complicated page or a web with a lot of traffic, you want to optimize everything, not just one, because this is like going into details. And I had people working on one web page for almost 3 to 4 months. Their job was to update to me every day, able to save even a 0.01 second on that. Okay, and that is the detailing that you can go for. So whether you want to reduce the doc size or whether you want to optimize the JavaScript, you want to do both. And once you see a HTTP pipelining, you will also understand sometimes Java has this issue of blocking the whole page and JavaScript is not loaded, rest of the thing get loaded. That has been a problem in many browsers, still those an issue. So you need to look at HTTP pipelining. Is there any JavaScript which is new? That is why you have a lot of asynchronous entering synchronous in terms of the JavaScript. And I will suggest that look at doc size because that's there for you to fix it and see whether there is unnecessary things. And also, I know the latest browsers, but previously we used to have 4 parallel pipelines which used to run and from 2 subdomains. Now at that time, want to increase it, you need to subdomains and to CDNs to improve it. That way, you need to look at it. If there is one document that you have, whether this is on the same domain or a sub something, so do it parallelly. So I will say look HTTP pipelining and see how you can optimize it rather than leaving something on one element or the other. And you have to choose between the user experience versus the loading time. I will say go for the user experience if that is giving you more.
All right, thank you so much for answering that, Aji. And now I think we are almost done, but we can quickly take one more question, which is how can we optimize JavaScript without compromising on interactive elements? Well, that's related to the question that which Aji just answered. So this time maybe we can ask, hey, Harry, you're sitting quiet.
Yes.
Why don't
Hello.
you answer
Yes.
this?
Sure. So So it's a good question. How can we optimize JS without breaking interactive elements? And this is actually something that comes up a lot with our juniors at our team, right? Google and a lot of those site auditing tools say, hey, your JavaScript's all over the place, maybe sort that out. Or even instances where people say, oh, minify your JS. Now, you can get away with minifying your JS if you know what you're doing by actually going in and doing that yourself. But if you're using a plugin to minimize it, you can often find that it breaks everything, right? I will never forget the frantic sound in one of our juniors' voice when they minify a website and they gently tap one of the seniors on the shoulder and say, hey, website looks a little bit funny after I minified that JS or CSS. And that's definitely something that can happen. How can you actually optimize that JS? Well, really the short answer is you need to know what you're doing in that JavaScript. There's no one-click kind of minify option most of the time. Sometimes there is. Maybe you'll try doing that and seeing how the page renders it. But I'd suggest if you're really serious about minifying that, you're going to have to go through that JavaScript yourself and find out how you can optimize it. Or sometimes actually we find that lazy loading JS can work well. We had a client that had a massive 10 megabyte JS file, right? Which is just huge, ridiculous, right? And what had happened is that loaded on every page. Now, rather than trying to go through that monstrosity of code structure, they lazy loaded it to only occur when that very specific element was used. It was like a product builder kind of thing, which rather than optimizing it was a much smarter way of doing it. I can see Gerry also mentioning the code coverage report in Chrome, which is the other thing I would look at. You can look at the code coverage section in that Chrome developer tools and play around with that. And that also is just like, I honestly think that Chrome is just anything that you could possibly want from a developer's perspective is there, right? So have a look through that and understand what might be causing an issue there as well. But yeah, short answer, you can try minifying it, but unfortunately it's often a case of really going through. And I would suggest under the 80-20 principle, this probably falls under that, this is really in the too hard basket a lot of the time. And there's a lot of other things you can do before this becomes a serious issue.
As Harry says, Chrome has now got all of these dev tools that mean that you're pretty much it's almost like an MRI machine for JavaScript and everything that's going on the website.
Yeah, how cool
so
is
much
it?
with it. I know the problem is I do feel like the more I learn, the more I kind of go, I don't understand half of this stuff that's going on.
That's
almost.
That's it.
Yeah. I sit with the developers and I'm trying to tell them, hey, look at this. And they're kind of going, yep, you don't understand that, do you? No, but it's definitely a red line.
Yeah.
And so, it does make me realize just how much JavaScript I need to learn based on using Chrome dev tools to kind of investigate how I can improve stuff. But yeah, it's an absolute. The videos that Chrome dev tools provide now are very comprehensive and really good. But as I say,
awesome.
My knowledge of JavaScript, yeah.
And I'll suggest following Steve Schauder. And Steve Schauder has written many books on that. Both Wieslow and Site Speed was done by Steve Schauder. He has written a book called Even More Fastest Websites. He has covered a lot of things, so people can start from there. Steve Schauder.
Perfect. A lot of content on this question. Thank you so much, guys. All right. So I think we're done for the day. And now it's a time to say goodbye in Semrush style, where you can share your key takeaway real quick. You would have roughly 30 seconds to say goodbye, to share your key takeaway, and also to talk about your preferred communication channel where people can reach you if their questions are not answered here. So maybe we can start with Aji.
Yeah, I'll say that in we have clutter. So get overwhelmed by a lot of things which are happening. But what you should focus on is how is it going to impact my top line and bottom line? Focus there. And world has a lot more available rather than just focusing on one or two things. So that will be my suggestion. And you can follow me on Aji TechShu at the rate AJITECHSHU on Twitter, or I'm available on LinkedIn. So I'm available.
Perfect. 30 seconds exactly. So Gerry, you're next.
30 seconds. Okay, so the one thing I would say, structured data, absolutely critical. Use the Google testing tool to make sure you have got structured data on product pages, home pages, everywhere else, and videos. And also, if you want to find me, I'm on Twitter at Dergal, which is DERGAL.
Perfect. Thank you. Harry, you're next.
Nailed it. Yeah, so I would say the key takeaway is don't do things just for the sake of ticking the SEO box, right? Think about what your users want first and foremost, and think of your website like a brand, right? The more you can increase that brand by building up that trust, the better off you're going to be. Best way to reach me, probably LinkedIn, Harry Sanders. Got a Twitter at StudioHawk, but to be honest, we really don't use it as much as we should. Otherwise, just shoot us an email at something like contact@studiohawk.com.au. Honestly, I'm best over email. If you send me an email there, more than happy to answer any questions. It's always good fun.
You took 35 seconds, but that's okay.
That's it, I'm off.
Well, thank you so much, guys, once again. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us and asking such lovely questions. I love challenging our experts with those questions. And we got, I think, really, really good answers. And I'm happy about the answers. I think you are happy as well. So thank you so much once again. Have a lovely day ahead. Goodbye. Take care.
Bye-bye. 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 Thank you so much.